Hi everyone, Julie Burdon-Stone here. This is my first drawing video that I'm going to upload onto YouTube today. So I thought I would just show you a little bit of my process in how I draw fur. So this area here is an area which I want to work on today. And I'm going to show you some of the processes of how I get some of the layers down and how I make fur look realistic. So I'm just going to zoom in on this area a little bit so that you can see a bit closer there. So you can see that obviously I've blocked in the areas in black, but I don't want these to look like sort of big cutouts, and I will go over these areas here as well and put a bit more detail on that as I go along. So what I usually do is I usually start with my paper so that I can lean on so I'm not smudging everything as well, is I start to just make some of these areas bleed into this area a little bit with the black. And that's because I want the fur to look continuous and I want it to look believable. And even when you get different transitions of colour in fur, you always get these areas where you get the odd hairs that cross over from one area to another. And I think that that's one of the things that makes it look really believable, because if it just looks like cutouts, it's not going to be as believable. So once I've got those sort of original bits down with the black, I'll go in with maybe a brown or one of the darker colours and just start to build into the coloured area here, because even cream fur it's not just cream. And I think if you start to really study fur a lot, you can see that there are lots of different layers to it, lots of different tones and shades in it. And what I often do is I just smudge that in a little bit as well. I find it really off-putting to work on really clean paper somehow, because I feel that I want to be in control of the colours that I'm laying down. And sometimes I think it's like, when I remember when I was younger, I used to get almost crippled by a white piece of paper. I just could not bring myself to do anything. The fear of being faced with a piece of white paper, and I suppose that's the perfectionist in me, and I've learned to realise that over the years. I didn't want to spoil it. I didn't want to make it look worse than when I started. But I've got over that fear a lot as I've got older and realised that everything you do isn't going to be perfect, and you are going to make mistakes, and you are going to learn, and you might have to start again, and it might not turn out how you envisage in your head, but that is part of the learning process. And being brave and being able to face those fears and just do it anyway is so important. So you can see I'm just building up several different layers here at the moment now, and I'm just going in with the cream. When I get to these areas where I'm going to go over into the black, I do tend, at the moment I haven't got a particularly sharp pencil. I do tend to like, that's where my points come in really. And I don't always work with really sharp pencils, but you can see that is a really great sharp pencil, and that is really good for just pulling in hairs. Oops, they do break very frequently, and I'm not really too bothered where they're going at this stage. Again, I'm going to go over the top of these a lot, and I'll pull out some of this black again. So fur is about lots of observation, but also being prepared to put in lots of different layers and colours, and looking at where the muscle tone is. So where on this clouded leopard you've got a jawbone here, so the jawbone comes around here, so there is a natural transition around this area that we would look at, because you've got muscle under here, so you've got different layers of shade that would come around here. So I would start to build those up to make it look as if there's a bit of a bulge there of where the muscle comes through. So don't be afraid to just take your time. There are no quick fixes to painting realism. And you know, often I hear other artists trying to speed up and trying to do really quick drawings and all the rest of it. And for me, that kind of, I think it takes the joy out of art for me. I like the fact it takes time. I like the fact that I can get engrossed in something, that the world can kind of slow down a little bit and I can just immerse myself in the thing that I love doing the most. So for me, it's not about producing copious amounts of work. It's always nice if you can produce a lot of work, and you know, especially if you've got high demand to sale. But I think we've all got to understand why we do it in the first place. And that's the same for a lot of artists who want to make a living out of their art. You know, if it's something that you absolutely love doing and you think, oh, it'd be great to be a full-time artist, it will be very different being a full-time artist to just doing it as a hobby, because all of a sudden the pressure will be there to produce work, to meet deadlines if you're doing commissions, and then you've got all your sales and your packaging and your marketing and all of that, and then the more successful you get, the more paperwork and admin and all the rest of it. So it's great if you want to do that, and that's what you want to do as a full-time artist, and many people that is their ultimate goal. But I've worked as a full-time artist, and I've also worked when art has been a sort of a hobby and a bit of a sideline for me as well, a bit of a side hustle, I think they call it these days. And there's pluses and minuses in both, but I think you have to know yourself. You have to know what motivates you, what doesn't, what you enjoy doing, what you don't enjoy doing. And just because it works for somebody else, it might not work for you. So you have to know yourself really well. And you know, not every artist wants to be a full-time artist selling loads of work. Some people just don't want to do art because they just like doing art, and that's fine too. And there's some exceptionally talented and fantastic artists who just produce work alongside the other things that they do in their life. So, you know, don't be pushed into doing something because you think you should. Do it because you want to, and do it because it's right for you, and find your own path. We've all got our own paths to tread, and they're not always right. So you can see I've already started to build the edges of this. Now again, when I talked about the edge of this black, I'm now going to go in with a sort of a more sort of reddy brown to kind of just soften that down a little bit. Black can be very flat on its own, and especially when it's bleeding into fur. So I tend to use just black on the very darkest areas, and then I'll move in with other colours to kind of give that sense of softness in the fur. And if you look, you know, that's where you can start to see a bit more detail in the fur. You won't see huge amounts of detail in the black fur, but then you wouldn't anyway. But I do think you need to sort of have, you know, the odd stray hair here and there, because, you know, it is part of the fur, and this would look very black and very flat if you didn't do anything with it. So I will go into those areas and do a bit more work. If I was working in acrylic paint, I would do exactly the same, and I would probably blend some of the sort of greys and things like that with it to make it look a bit more believable. So these kind of spots here, like this one, this very faded one, they'll start off as a big black dot essentially. The beauty of pastel is that you can work light over dark. Now this will bleed a lot into white if you're not careful. So I tend to use these little cotton buds. They're tiny little cotton buds with a very quite sharp end, and I would just use that to push the pigment right in to the pastel mat. And by doing that, you're taking away a lot of the dust that you would get, and then when you go over it with the white, you get less pick up onto your pencil, and you can make it look more believable as it's receding onto the page. So again, I would probably just bleed into that with a few random strokes. And then I go over the top with white to just I don't want it to look like it's a big black blob on the side of his face. And some of these, because at the moment you can see that it looks like I'm drawing every single hair, but when I start to refine it, there will be areas where I'll go in and I might sort of make some of these hairs less defined, because they clump in together on the face, and that's where you've got your your big sort of areas of white or your light, and it sort of makes it a bit more, again, believable in terms of that thickness of fur. So I'm using a combination of cream and white when I'm working in these areas, and I will sometimes go in again with the brown and just pick out a few areas in here to just give it a bit more depth. And it doesn't matter if you make a mistake or if you do something that you think, oh, actually that doesn't look great. There's lots of ways you can fix things to make it more, you know, recoverable, if you like. So one of the things that you can do is you can put a piece of paper over it and you can push it into the paper. That takes a lot of the area surface of the pastel away, so that you can work over the top. You can use a putty eraser, which I use, and that lifts a lot of the pastel off. Or sometimes I might use masking tape, and masking tape will pick pigment off the paper as well. So and you can brush it without obviously breathing in the dust. But you're only going to know these things if you experiment and you try different things. So don't ever be afraid to try things and just experiment. But most of all, really enjoy what you do. Get the joy for doing it. If it's too hard, then you need to do something a bit simpler so that you can get some results where you're feeling like you're making some really good progress. If it's too easy, you're not going to be challenged, so you need something that is going to push you, but not to the point where you're going to give up. And make sure that you try and progress each time you do something, that you do something a little bit more challenging, so that you can see your progress. And when you do make something that you're really proud of, celebrate it and be really proud of yourself. Being creative is one of the best things in life, I think. And yeah, if I can promote it, support it, help it, then that'd be great. Okay, hope you've enjoyed this little video. If this format works for you, let me know. If you'd like to see more, or if there's something specific that I do that you would like to see more of, let me know. I want to develop this, so I'm trying videos for the first time. I haven't done them before, so I'm learning as I go along. So I can only learn and improve by getting the feedback from you guys. So thank you for watching, and see you next time. Take care. Bye.